All right, you've hit play. Thank you so much for hitting play today, right here on the Gill Connections podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cunningham, National Business Development Manager for Track and Field, but really the host of this podcast. That's really what I do around here, as well as mess around on Twitter every once in a while, basically every day. I'm super pumped. I have been talking with today's guest for a while to get this scheduled. We're coming off the Sprint 2 series and all that stuff on Netflix. Earlier this year, you heard us have Tanja Buford Bailey on the podcast. We got to learn about that and kind of talk about it. So I'm really pumped to not only talk about those kind of topics, but really to get to know the story of today's guest and how she got to where she is today. So help me welcome. She's got a lot of titles. So we're just going to go with like two that I know we're going to talk about. She's the head women's relays coach for USATF. That's got its own connotations, right? She also, I'm really wanting to dig into this TrackGirlz thing she started and what it does for our sport and for young ladies that are in our sport and around our sport. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Oh my gosh. Wow. This is going to be a long, long day. The wise, the wonderful Mechelle Freeman. Mechelle, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Even after me saying Mr., I'm sorry. That might be the biggest flub I've done on 300 episodes. Holy.
That's
Uh,
okay. It's all right. I know Mrs.
Yeah, that's kind of where, yeah. I was really focused on the Michelle part, right? And not Michelle. And that I flubbed it. I can give all excuses in the world. We're recording a day or two before Christmas, and we just came back from USTFCCA. I'm hopefully getting over this cold, walking
It's
pneumonia,
okay.
whatever the heck this thing is. So
You get grace. You get grace.
that we need more of that, by the way, in this world. So thank you so much for saying that. Hey, the first question I wanted to ask you, I thought about this immediately when we agreed to have you on the show and everything. Has anybody called you Mechelle Freeman yet?
What? No, I've been mistaken for Mechelle Freeman, the wonderful Jamaican Olympic athlete.
Oh yeah, but no one's
But
taken relay and Freeman and put Freelayman into it. No
I've
one.
never.
I'm trademarking that right now for anybody who hears that because that's a genius idea, right? Free layman, come on. I'm
Oh
not
my,
sure that's low hanging fruit that no one's given yet. Okay,
let's
all
make
right,
a t-shirt.
there you go. Exactly. It's a bumper sticker if people still do that, and it's definitely a
Now,
case for
somebody
it.
has called me the stick chick. And I am a narrow woman. In charge of the relays. So it is my Bluetooth name on my phone.
Is it
But
really the stick chick?
yeah, it was a joke, but I actually just went along with it for a little bit.
I love it. Yeah, there's a lot of, you can go good ways and bad ways with all that. I'm just going to stick with free layman just to be safe here and move on from there. Michelle, so a lot of topics to discuss with you. You've got a lot of experience with a lot of really cool parts of our sport and definitely want to dig into that. But here, what we start with is we want to learn more about you. How in the world did you get into this great sport? How did you get into coaching? Really focusing on maybe mentors along the way that have helped you out. So why don't we hop in our Wayback Machine here and let's just start with first and foremost, how does Mechelle Freeman get into track and field? Where does that even start for you?
Oh man, that starts in Oxon Hill, Maryland, racing the boys in the neighborhood streets. My sister and I, we were always known as the Fast Twins, and they always wanted to race us. And I can go back as far as I can remember to just racing in the streets and beating the boys and winning since then. And that was my introduction into wanting to race. And I would say my first official introduction to track and field was and not until high school. My sister and I, of course, went through elementary school and middle school, still winning races, PE miles and president's tests and things like that. But we weren't officially introduced to the sport of track and field until high school.
Did you say you're a twin?
Yes, it's two of me.
I love that. That makes me automatically think, did you guys ever play tricks like, run around the building and then your twin hops on? You guys like they're able to do that's how you did the mile. One of you did half a mile, the other one did the other. And
I mean, that's how we would have to do the mile today.
yeah, amen.
But no, yeah, we've exchanged roles and playing around with she being me and me being her. But yes, I'm the youngest. My sister's Makisha, And we both married Freeman. So we were the Lewis twins, and now we're the Freeman twins.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of hop forward a little bit. You recently were on a good friend of mine, good friend of Gil, podcast, the Ready Set Go podcast, hosted by the Bearded Wonder. That's how he'll forever be known now, by the way. And good friend of mine, known him forever, Justin Gatlin. You guys, I thought it was they do a great job. They've certainly evolved and are doing a really, really great job with their interviews. But I highly recommend if you like this podcast, even if you don't like this podcast, you'll like that podcast. Go check out same app you're using right now, Ready Set Go. But check out Michelle's episode there. They really, you guys just had. It seemed like there was a lot of good chemistry, and it was a lot of fun because there was a lot of laughing and little inside jokes and stuff. And I just really appreciated listening to that. But one of the things that I picked up from that was that you and your sister both married different people with both of the last names of Freeman. That's crazy.
I know it's bizarre, but I mean, I came in with a Lewis twin. Now I got a Freeman twin, so same name still from
And
beginning of birth to death.
and those guys, they're not twins, right? These are totally separate people.
Totally separate people.
Who got married or started dating a Freeman first, you or your sister?
She did. She did.
When they started dating, and I don't know if they were married by the time you started dating your Freeman, but they had to be at least somewhat like you knew him. And did you, when you met your Freeman, go, I don't know if I could do this? That's just like, or was it like, you know what, this sounds right for twins?
You know what? We didn't even put two and two together, until one day I was like, wait a minute. But, even when I first started dating my husband, David, I never thought about us being Freeman twins.
Right.
Yeah, but it happened.
I tell you, that's the kind of thing. Go buy a lottery ticket or something. I mean, the odds of that have to be pretty low.
I know, here we are.
Well, you grew up in the east side of the United States in the Maryland area. What a great, I'm not sure it gets its due for track and field. There's some amazing athletes and track athletes that come out of that area. As you got introduced to it as in high school, other sports, or did you stick to like, oh yeah, this is my love, I'm going all in over here?
Yeah, I mean, we started out with basketball as our first sport. We didn't start doing organized sports till we were about 13. We did Girl Scouts, theater, just dance, just different activities growing up. But sports really, just stuck with us once we got going. But basketball was our first sport. I actually started playing. That's why Bullis and Masai and Quincy and that whole Bullis, that's where I actually started playing sports, was at Bullis. We used to go to our AAU games there all the time. But then soccer, the basketball coach made the basketball team become the soccer team, so we can, what he called, stay in shape. And that was the most running I had ever done, and continuous running. But still the speed there separated us, and people, just wanted to make sure that by the time we got to high school, we had to start running track because they could recognize how fast we were in our other sports.
I love that. You mentioned Bullis School. Head coach Joe Lee has been on the show. I think he's got the record. I think he's on 3 or 4 times. Sitting down talking about his journey, and then we talked about the Olympic trials and how that worked out, and then we had him come back after the Olympics and just share the whole experience. So shout out to Joe Lee, love him to death, and what he's doing guiding this young man and other. I know Quincy gets the headlines, but there's some other people at Bullis that are really fast, and he's doing a great job there. So, what was it like as a high school athlete? And what I mean by that is, today, old people like me and you, I'm more older than you are here, Mechelle, but we like to complain that young people today don't know the fast ones of the past, they don't know who the Carl Lewises were and all these other things. But when you were in high school, did you know, like, did you kind of have and you're a little bit younger than me, but we're in that same kind of age bracket. The internet's not what it was back then and what it is today. Like, we didn't really have that. We had track and field news, and that was basically it back when, at least in my age and stage. But did you know like who the other fast people in the state or the region were, or were you just, man, I'm just trying to be the fastest. I'm not even the fastest in my family. Maybe I'm just trying to be the fastest there.
Yeah, it's so, because and you're so much in your bubble. But my sister and I didn't realize how talented we were. But once you start getting exposed to the meets, and you're still winning, then you start to realize, how talented you really are. So it was a blessing for us to continue to be successful as our competition increased, as we started going to national, high school, the indoor and outdoor championships, and making a podium, and then going to USATF. We say summer track meets and winning the 4x4s, winning the relays. And my sister was the 400-meter national champion for USATF, some summer. So we just started to realize how talented we were the more we were exposed to national level competitions. And then also the people who we competed with, the Suzanne Reeds, that was during my time, coming from the Maryland area, seeing them go on and then competing at a high level and being successful. We were competing against them every day and not realizing, as a group, how talented we were. So yeah, Maryland, we came away with some great people, James Carter, Bernard Williams, Joel Brown. We were all coming up at the same time in that Maryland area. Baltimore Armory, setting records with our waffles on, rubberized 200-meter indoor tight tracks, and just is making it happen.
Great point. This is going to be my old man here statement of tracks are different today, especially indoors. I know surfaces and all that stuff are outdoors, but when you mention a tight, flat track, well, that was, if there was a track, that was it. There was no banked and hydraulics and all that stuff, man.
No, just flat, tight, rubberized track, and you had to run in your waffles.
That's right. I love it. I love it. What did you have the same track coach during this whole time? And what was your relationship with him or her?
That's another important, separator is the coaching. We were blessed to have a coach that was really committed to our development. And again, at the time, you don't really understand that, but now as a coach looking back, you can see it. And he really knew what he was doing as far as taking talent like my sister and I and making sure that we did develop and reach our full potential. And so that was great. We had a great community of coaches. We had one of our assistant coaches, Coach Mary Brown. She started an all-girls track club, so I was around strong women leaders, from high school age. So it was not foreign to me to expect to have women in leadership roles. And I was guided by just really committed mentors from a young age, people who were committed to the communities, helping youth succeed. So that's been instilled in me just because I received that. And now, on the opposite end of it now, being a leader in the community, I just want to make sure that I'm pouring in the same way that I was able to receive when I was a young girl.
I love hearing that. You're not of an age and stage. We've had some older women coaches on here who expressed the opposite, meaning they never saw another woman coach. They was always coached by male. So it was, I'm gonna air quotes here, maybe it was harder for them to see that they could coach because it wasn't in front of them. It was always typically a white male that was in front of them. So for you to see that at a young age, we're going to talk about this here in a little while, but that kind of makes sense that there's a TrackGirlz theme going on with what you do, kind of like you're maybe bridging that gap and continuing that legacy of other women that were in front of you leading and showing you what was possible.
Oh, for sure. 100%. I mean, I in Prince George's County, we being a Black girl is a normal thing because, it's the most populated Black community in the U.S. One of the strongest of just successful Black communities in the country. So for us to have Black leaders was a normal thing for us, which I'm really grateful for because that's the expectation for me, is to see Black women and just Black leadership from a young age. So yes, I'm blessed to say that is what I was raised around, and that was set up as a standard for me to see Black leadership from a young age.
I love that you had that and had those opportunities. And I love, and we're going to learn more about this again here in a little while, that you're making sure that other young girls are able to see that as well and not have this dearth of what's possible out there for them. So I love that. I love that.
Women
I
coaches.
love that. I just agreed. Uh, so when you, okay, I'm always curious about this. I don't necessarily want to talk about your sister a lot and sibling rivalries and all this stuff, but we all have rivalries, whether it's another school, whether it's someone on your team. But you also mentioned that your sister was pretty good at track as well. Was there ever like were you always trying to beat her and vice versa, or was it more? Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like being a twin, to be honest with you. I had no siblings, so I don't even know what that's like. But what was it like growing up with someone who assumably looks just like you? Are you fraternal? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
we're fraternal. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
okay.
fraternal, but when we're side by side, people always ask us, are we twins?
Yeah,
Yeah, same stature. We look enough alike that people know that
yeah.
we're definitely sisters, but half that same population acts as we're twins. But
Right.
what's great about having Makisha was that I always had a friend. I always had somebody I could depend on,
That's cool.
somebody I could trust, um, somebody that was just there for me, and had my back. And I'm truly grateful for that, going into new environments and always having something familiar. But when it came to competition, what was great about us is that we separated ourselves as that I was just a full explosive 100-meter sprinter. The 200 meters was long for me, but I still got it done. And Keisha was the 400-meter specialist. So we never directly competed against each other. We always separated from the very beginning. I handled the short sprints, she handled the long sprints.
And you'd meet up at the relays, which seems
Yeah, we
appropriate.
yeah, but the relays, the 4x1, and I have always run the 4x4. I have
Mm.
always run the 4x4. No matter what, I have run a 4x4 since the first year I've started track and field.
I love that. That's so cool. Well, shout out to your sister because again, I don't have any brothers and sisters. I can't imagine what like having a twin. But what you said there kind of warmed my heart when you're like, you know what? I always had a friend. If we were in a situation where we were the strangers, no one knew who we were. Well, we knew each other, and I
Exactly.
assume I watch a lot of movies and stuff, so you twins could talk to each other in your mind, or so I don't know. That's maybe just TV stuff. I don't know. I don't know.
Our secret language.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's right. Okay, so senior year, you're doing really well. You guys are, I love the idea of that as the competition got better. Well, we kept doing our thing too. What were you looking for in a college? Where did you end up going? And what were you thinking academically? Meaning, like, I don't know that we necessarily thought we were all going to be in track in some point in time, but maybe you wanted to be a doctor or a business owner. What were you thinking at that time as a 17, 18-year-old?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, well, I don't want to, toot my own horn, but I've always been smart. Someone said that I was astute when I was a young girl. And at first, when they said that, I really didn't get it. But, I understand what they mean by that just because I've always been, someone to pay attention and observe, my environment, observe the situation. I'm very much a problem solver, always thinking ahead, seeing what's in front of me, and being proactive of what needs to be done. I was a straight A student since elementary school through middle school. I graduated with honors in high school. And so I've always been balanced. My mom always taught me the importance of that, being in control of your life pathways. Just because you are a talented track athlete, that's not all that you can offer the world. So I've always been also a social human being. So I like the trade of communications and marketing and
Yeah.
has always been interesting to me. I used to watch the movies Big and Boomerang, and when I saw them making commercials and TVs and da 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 da, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. So going into college, I always knew, since my freshman year that I was going to major in mass communications, which I did.
Wow.
South Carolina, ended up being such a blessing for my sister and I. We were getting recruited, to UNLV, UConn, Hampton, Rutgers, a lot of East Coast schools.
Mhm.
But as far as the South, South Carolina was the only SEC school that was recruiting us, outside of Vanderbilt,
Hmm.
actually. But but South Carolina, was interesting because once we went on our visit, it was something you just can't describe. You just know. And we had such a great visit, just meeting the coaches, the facilities, the teammates. We had so much fun. But not only that, it was the recruiting class that we were going to be surrounded with some great amount of talent. I mean, you had the Barber twins, Demetria Washington.
Right,
Yeah, we had some great people, but some other athletes that were coming in from the South that we had done research on. But we were most impressed with just being able to just iron sharpens iron, being around the best athletes every single day. And we really trusted Coach Frye when he was talking about building a team. That was his first recruiting class at the University of South Carolina. And so we got excited about that. And we can get two full scholarships for the two of us together. Uh, so, I mean, we went for it. It was our first visit, and we never went on any other visit and signed in that November after our visit.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely gonna dig into Curtis Frye, one of the all-time legends. What a great human being, besides also being an amazing coach. But before that, it's interesting something you said there about that you guys were interested in iron sharpens iron.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, is people that were very successful, you're talking about academically, athletically, my words here, it sounded like you're a little bit of a socialite, like you maybe got along with a lot of different groups and
Yep.
things like that. You know, some people can't handle not being the big man on campus, right? In fact, there was a study, and I wish I could actually remember more of the study, but they talked about the mental health of people that go to like a Harvard or a Cornell, these big academic schools. These are all the top of the top, right? These are all valedictorians and things like that. And then they go to a school where everybody is the top of the top, and they can't handle that because they're no longer these are probably my words, not the study words, but they're no longer special. They're not, they're everybody is friggin' smart there. You seemed to want to lean into that. Like, oh, I want other people that maybe are as good or maybe even better in a group of them so that iron sharpens iron. That's the definition of like, oh, we can all get better. Or if we don't all, maybe I will because there'll be other people better than me. But where does that come from? That's not necessarily, I don't know you're born with that. That maybe is more modeled to you or taught to you. Where might that come from?
Well, I mean, again, just having a twin sister, I'm always used to, just being with someone and challenging each other,
Mm,
competing, wanting to see used to wanting to cheer for someone, wanting to see someone else to succeed. And from coming from Oxon Hill, our high school team, it wasn't just, myself or my sister, but our jumpers were good. Our long distance, we had some good things there. Our HEPs, multi-athletes. So whenever I'm like a crew, like I love having a dope crew. When you walk
mm.
in a room, they go to TrackGirlz. It's everyone. It's like the Justice League. You have somebody who can do this, and somebody who can read minds, somebody who could fly, somebody who could teleport, but when you come together, that's where the power is. So that's just something I was used to, something I came from. And I just wanted to continue to take that to the next level. And I know when I looked around that, hey, I'm going to get better, with great people. You want to learn from great people. You want to be surrounded by great people. You always want to have a value exchange with your small bubble.
I love that. That makes me, I have to ask. So who would you be if you were a superhero? You mentioned you kind of seem like you know some superhero stuff here. So who would you be?
Oh my gosh. If my husband, we talk about like if you have superpowers, what would you
Yeah, yeah,
do?
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I just, I don't know. Maybe I always talk about, like we always say, would you rather or not? But I always ended up just being like that person that could fly and be somewhere quick. I'm always want to do something quick. I don't have a lot of patience, but I'm fast on the track, but I need to get somewhere, achieve something quick, do some things. So whatever I could do to be fast and like make it an impact quick. Somebody needs help, I can get there quick.
I love that. We didn't have we had Flash and who was the other super speedy guy? But they're always got. I don't know that we ever had a woman that was like a comic book character that was like Flash. I can't remember that
That's
off.
what I'm saying. That's why I can't be one
Yeah,
person. That's why I say I just need to be able to fly and get somewhere quick.
I
I
like
know
it.
Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel.
Yep. Oh
Um,
yeah.
Captain Marvel, you could do some things
Yeah.
quickly and get
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
So, things like that.
I love it. I love it. Sorry, you didn't, Justin didn't ask you that question. I'm just going to say that, Justin. These are what the professionals do. We ask these crazy questions. Okay.
That's funny.
So I do tell us more. I revere Curtis Frye for several reasons. One, I love his longevity in our profession. He was a coach for many, many years. I love his success. He always had, I was at Mississippi State for a couple of years, and I told you before we hit record, I didn't like South Carolina because you guys whooped our butts all the time. So I wasn't a big fan of those Gamecocks over there in Columbia. But tell me, what was it like to work on a daily basis with not only a great coach, you can't take that away from him, Hall of Fame, but really like what a human being. I just love Curtis Frye, the person, even more so than Coach Frye. What was it like to be able to work for years under him?
Oh man, Coach Fry. I still call Coach Fry until this day.
Oh,
He's a mentor of mine, someone who took the 18-year-old version of who I am and allowed me to evolve into the woman I am today. Just helping me through those critical years of transition from being, a high school girl to becoming a young woman. So just those critical years of development into adulthood, he was there. He he took this rough around the edge, coming from Prince George's County, ready to fight at any, opportunity just to like stand for whatever I believed in and just help me to understand how to, hone that in, how to control that, and use it as a part of my power as a woman. And then, just making sure he kept us, we trained. I mean, he taught us just how to train. We were in the best shape of our lives, at that time. We showed up to practice, and one thing that we worked on every day was competing.
mm,
So by the time we got to a track meet, we competed every day at practice. Not only did we have, some of the best collegiate women, but I was there at the time he was training Melissa Morrison, Howard, and Calvin Smith and Alan Johnson and his whole pro group, and Jeanette Kirkland. So we had everyone just, in Monique Hennigan, and we had everyone just in our every single day. Like, so you can just imagine that the expectations of performance was just a regular thing for us. Like, us being the best every day I just saw it every single day.
mm.
What it took to the Olympic people who win Olympic gold medals, where I was training with them, seeing them train every single day. Terrence Trammell's. It was an everyday thing for us. So I just think the best thing I got out of being under Coach Frye's tutelage was just, again, learning how to show up every single day, surround yourself with the best people, and normalizing the expectation of high performance.
It's hard to be. It feels like it would be hard. I don't want to say it like I was involved in any of these type of activities. You guys are amazing. Uh, it seems like it'd be hard to be complacent. You feel like you're just going to show up and just go through the motions one day, and you get your tail
Oh,
handed
your,
to you.
your butt whipped, right? And no one was coming there and taking any prisoners. Like every single day, you wanted to be the best. You wanted to make sure that you showed them why you were there. You had something to prove. You were a part of this group, and this is why. And so by the time we got to our senior year, I mean, he had gathered Lashinda Demas, and I know we Erica Whipple,
Oh,
all those names. And so we brought that first national championship in any sport to our school, my senior year, just with some of the best women in the history of the sport,
yeah.
especially on the collegiate level. And so I'm just grateful that, again, that time at South Carolina just taught me how to level up,
Mhm.
how to level up every single day, the level of discipline, commitment that's necessary for you to have the outcome of being the best.
What was that like winning the national title as a team? You know, when you, if I remember correctly, when you guys all came in, it wasn't like South Carolina was, you know, second or third at nationals. I'm not going to put you on the very bottom like you were dead last at SECs and stuff, but I don't remember there being a great squad. And you guys built from your recruiting class. The next one you mentioned all these people. You know, this is right during my time frame. So every time you mention these people, I'm like, oh man, that's right, Demas. Oh man, Whipple. I remember her. You know,
Yes.
it's really the who's who of track and field during that time. You build up. You guys kept getting better and better as a team, and then your senior year, you win the national. I mean, it's hard to win. What was that like when you guys actually, you know, the 4x4 is over and you're named the national champions?
Oh my gosh. It's, it's my senior year. I'm again, you're surrounded with, you're watching the meet and seeing all the different tools from the Aileen Baileys going out
Mhm.
there doing what she needed to do. And people just showing up, in the right moments. And that's what it took. And I remember I was actually hurt just coming off of a hamstring injury at NCAA. So I didn't get to contribute in the way that I wanted to. And I only was able to run the prelims and the 4x100 meter relay. It was a tad bit of disappointment,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's always a larger picture. And you think about your contribution over the 4 years to a program that you saw evolve from, like I said, Coach Frye's first recruiting class to in 4 years, you all becoming national champions. So actually being named that, I mean, and then it was the first national championship to the University of South Carolina in any sport.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, we became a part of history at our university. So no, again, just thinking about my life, I'm just grateful so many times over and over again for just being chosen, to be a part of some of the things that I've experienced, including that moment.
Yeah, I can see you talk about your evolution of from an 18-year-old, you know, high school girl that comes into college to a 22-year-old young woman as you know, Coach Fry led you through, what your teammates led you
Yeah,
through as well. And then I can see that disappointment. And it's hard to see, even as a 22, you know, we think 22, we're about to graduate. It's like, oh, you know, I'm an adult. And now as you know, real adults, we're like, oh man, I'm still a pup at 22. What did I know? It's hard to see that while you may not have been able to do the things athletically you wanted to do at that meet, uh, the people that were on that team wouldn't be there without people like you. You helped recruit them, you helped train with them, etc. It's much bigger than what just happens to get first place or eighth place at
it's
that
much
track
bigger.
meet. Much bigger, much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. That's really cool. So, what do? You have a mass communications degree, coming off a little bit of an injury here,
Yeah.
but you're amongst other Olympians.
Yeah.
What does one do in that case?
I know. So at that point, I wanted to, it was 2002 and the upcoming Olympic Games were coming up in 2 years. I thought about training for a moment, but I just knew my body at the time. I just cannot shake this hamstring injury.
Mhm.
So I just focused on my other path, and that was, again, communication. So I stayed in South Carolina. All my friends were still there. All my teammates were still, competing. And I wasn't ready to go back to Maryland. And I decided to stay in South Carolina and do the graduate program for integrated marketing communications. And once I did that, I mean, that was a 2 year program. We had a mandatory internship we had to complete. And while I was an undergrad, I had won, one of these top 25 minorities in advertising in the country awards. And they had flown us to New York, and I had met some of the top ad agencies at that moment. So I reached back out to this one agency I met, Y&R, and ended up getting an internship to complete my graduate degree. Moved to New York City. And from there, I graduated in 2004, and I actually started thinking about if I wanted to train again. And long story short, after I still worked for another 2 years. So 2006, I officially quit my job and decided to go for the 2008 Olympics after a 4 year break.
What in the world? So hold on. There's a little bit of audacity here, Mechelle. You know, it's like, you know, people bust their hump their whole lives continually and don't make the Olympic team. You went out and had started the beginnings of a real career here, as far as the professional sector, not necessarily the athletic sector here. And you were just like, let me try it. I was talented. Maybe it's still there. How did that first real practice go? Meaning, how sore were you after not doing
Oh,
these
man.
type of workouts?
Oh my gosh. I never forget. I caught a crazy Charlie horse. I still have the marks on my legs from grabbing at it with my nails. But I'm talking about out of shape coming back 4 years. I mean, living in New York City the last 2 years, doing everything but training. So it was a tough first practice, but I kept it through.
Nice.
I trained there with Coach Solomon. He took me under his wing. I told him, I was like, look, I'm gonna make this Olympic team in 2 years. And he was, had a track club in New York and let me start training with his group. But I just started to realize that New York City just wasn't conducive to like the training I needed as a sprinter. And Lisa Barber and a couple other of my previous teammates were still competing in North Carolina and training there. And so I decided to move to North Carolina to continue training. And yeah, that's where I trained until I ended up making the world championship team 9 months later. Ended up running 100 meters at Osaka in the 4x1 9 months after I moved to train full time.
Was it like the old saying, you never forget how to ride a bike? I mean, while day one might have been real sore and the Charlie horse, within like 4 weeks, are you like, okay, I'm kind of back in the rhythm. I still got training to do, but I'm back into this.
Yeah, it is. It is. Once you start going, the talent is still there. It's just really about uh, understanding, recovery and
Mm,
movement and strength, like the science side of it.
right.
And that was the difference. Coming back, I started to understand the technical aspect of it, the physics of it, the movement patterns, and not just being in the best shape of my life,
Mhm.
but understanding how to execute the technical aspects of a 100-meter race. And that was the biggest difference, being in shape, but also understanding the race from a
Mhm.
student perspective, which
Right.
was the biggest difference maker in my success being an elite athlete.
What was it like? I mean, if I was a betting person, I probably would not have bet on you to make the world champs team in 9 months.
Oh,
Maybe the 2 years Olympics, maybe.
I was the last one in. I was
Yeah.
not the last one in, and I was like number 32 out of 32 being
Holy.
entered to the '07 USA Championships that year. And each round, I just, kept getting better. Coach Frye actually gave me a new pair of spikes. I asked him, I said, Coach, I need a new pair of spikes. And he gave me a new pair of spikes that like the night before. And then just round by round, I just kept getting it in. And the real difference maker was, that semifinal. The semifinal, you either got that real tough heat, like I was saying on Justin's podcast, or the easy heat. And I had that tough heat. And top four, back then, top four made it. And when I crossed that line and I got it by thousandths of a second, hundredths of a second, something like that, point oh one it was, I got it by hundredths of a second. And that right there changed everything. Once I got into the final, then, it changes. The semifinal in 100 meters is where things can go tricky. It either goes one way or another. But once you
Yeah.
get to that final, it's anybody's game. So yeah, I just, just took it round by round and it really happened. It really happened.
D-
Crazy
Does does that I always try to like non-athlete. I mean, I tried, I ran track, but I was just terrible. So when I get to talk to amazing athletes like yourself, I try to like put myself into like the mentality because I've been around a bunch of good I coached some pretty good kids and stuff. But doing it in 9 months and you make the team mentally wise, was there like a switch, or what was your mindset in regards to like, do you think you're like invincible a little bit now? Like, oh, guys, this was 9 months. We're talking about the Olympics next year. Give me a whole nother year. You're all
yeah.
toast. Or was it
Oh
still,
no.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No. Well, the biggest thing I would say was a difference in also my faith. When you are really locked in your faith and you're believing what you're reading in the word and the word says, then you're holding yourself accountable to your faith. And if I say I'm a faithful person, then I have to believe what I'm reading and what I'm believing. And so I really had that mindset that, I could do anything. Impossible is nothing. I could do all things. And so that was the mindset that I had. And so my mind, my body, it didn't even know anything. It didn't know how to think any other way, but that everything is possible. Like, it is very possible for you to make this team. And so that's the mindset that I had going into that 2007 championship. But coming off that, I mean, that summer, I went on to NACAC and became the NACAC 100-meter champion. I went on to Pan Am Games and, got the silver medal there. And then when I got on site at Osaka, Allison was supposed to double, and she pulled out of the 100 2 days before the 100-meter was supposed to start, and I was the next one up. And so I ended up 9 months later being in the 100 meters at a world championship. And I didn't know, to be honest, at that moment, I didn't realize like where I was, like in really retrospect of like the world championships.
Right.
I didn't know where I was. I just showed up on a line and ran 100 meters. It was a pretty crazy moment.
Yeah.
But just going on from there, yeah, you are thinking that at that point, you're like, whoa, God, okay, well,
I hear
well,
you.
I hear you. Thank you for this world championships, but this Olympic Games is coming up. So can we keep this going? Yeah, so yeah, it was a pretty incredible journey, those next couple years as an elite athlete.
Faith sounds pretty important. Is this something that came on late, like college or beyond, or was this been in the family from it may be in the family, but sometimes it's not necessarily in us. Where does faith start for you there?
Oh gosh, we grew up. My mom and dad, we grew up in the church,
Mm,
and so it's always been a pillar of who we are as a family. But I say the difference is when you take the accountability as an adult for to lead with that, and that happened while I was in New York.
mm,
To start having my own journey of faith,
mhm.
without being guided by someone else and taking that authority. So I would say, coming out of New York, it just shaped me to walking on that path of, walking in my full potential as a human. And in order for me to be in my full potential, I have to really understand the possibilities through my faith. And so that has been a big part of who I am now as a coach, my decision making. And it's been a good part of, why I was able to do some great things as an athlete.
Yeah, I love that. New York City, again, not from experience here, but feels like one of those places that can change you for the good or the bad. So
Oh my God.
it's good to hear that there was some good that came. Not some. There seems like a lot of good that came out of your time at New York City, including the decision of like, I need to get back into track and field.
Oh man, New York City is a very special place for me. And I think about it as a place of transformation, of, coming into who I was as a woman in New York. So every time I go back to New York, I mean, it's for me, it's going to always bring back the memories of like stepping into Mechelle.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. So where does a lot of our athletes, I don't want to say fall into coaching, but that's what we know, right? We maybe were blessed to have a great coach that affected them positively. So we think about being coaches ourselves. You went into advertising, not coaching, and then came back as an athlete and did pretty
No.
well. That's amazing. Where does even the thought of like, well, maybe I could coach?
Yeah, I mean, once you have a gift at something, the gift is there. And so it just, you just have to figure out, how it evolves as you
Mhm.
evolve as a person. So it just came down to whether or not I was going to focus on that, or if I was going to go back into advertising. And at first, I did go back into advertising. I went back into working at agencies. I've worked at Coca-Cola and managed their London 2012 sponsorship activation. I had some great experiences. The Super Bowl in Arizona. I had some great clients, Xerox. But it came when I met Terry Crawford.
Mhm.
And, Terry Crawford, she
Love her.
said, Mechelle, we're having a program with our our coaching education where we want elite athletes to start, coming on the coaching side. So, if you do this USATF level one, you can at least just do it and see where it takes you. But the elite athletes, get a huge discount, and, it'll be great for you to start there. So it always takes one, to see one. And she saw me, and a woman coach saw another opportunity for someone to be a woman coach. So it was Terry Crawford who actually put that first bug in my ear to think about coaching, coming to the coaching side. So I did. And I did the USATF level one. At the time I was living in Arizona, and I started coaching at a high school there. So I became the sprints coach, and it was just coaching the boys and the girls of all the sprints, the relays, and then it just started to grow from there. I went and moved to Minnesota. I was the sprints coach at Wayzata High School, and I just developed so much. I mean, especially coaching sprints in Minnesota, but.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just transforming teams, teaching them how to compete, teaching them how to win, taking them on a path of just understanding training, being very intentional. They were just used to coming out there and just running whatever they were being told, but you needed to understand why and what needed to be done. So just teaching them intentionality, why things matter, input equals output. And so that's when my first coaching days started, was at the high school levels, with Terry, telling me to do these things. And from there, I got a call, and I had been, still involved with USATF because I was on the athlete advisory committee.
Oh, yeah.
So I would still be around the athletes. I would still be, I was the USOPC athlete rep. So I was still, just responsible for policies and understanding what needed to be done from the athlete perspective and the organization. So Sue Humphrey, she was the women's chair at the time. And another woman coach, seeing.
And Gill podcast alum, by the way. Love Sue. Mm-hmm.
See, another, so another woman coach, she said, I see something in you. And we have an opportunity we want an elite athlete, a retired athlete, to come back and assist our relay program. And at that point I had, been on relays, 2008 games, 2007, of course, all through high school and college. We were a relay program in South Carolina.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been winning relays since I was 16. And I was known also as a relay person I can run any leg. And just, I'm like I said, I observe and I learn and I teach. So I had experiences of speaking up in moments, just, to make sure that we all understood the assignment, or, what, but I also have like TT Terry is like that. I always tell her she's going to be a coach one day, but you have those athletes that just, see things and speak up in certain ways, when they're athletes, that stand out to say that they really, get things and see things. But I've always been that type of athlete, especially when it comes to the relays. But she saw something in me enough to ask me to apply for that opportunity. And so I applied for the opportunity, and I was selected for that opportunity. And that was in 2015. So 2015, they just started out by having me come to different junior teams and start to see the process of like what was going on, how things worked. And I just started doing more and more of that every year, and to the point where I can come and start taking over and teaching as the assistant relays coach, and then managing the junior teams on my own. So between 2015 and 2019, it was 4 years of me going through that process. 2019 was my first senior team that I traveled to Doha with Orrin Richburg, who was the head coach at the time. And then, it just went on from there.
It's striking the people that have had influence on your life at this point of the journey that we're talking about. Because, I have such reverence for Terry Crawford, Sue Humphreys, and Orrin Richburg. I mean, these are just giants in our industry that have, their fingerprints are all over what we're doing today in 2024 and 2025, for crying out loud. I mean, those are amazing people to be around. What I'm wondering, as you were coaching through the high school rank, and I don't know, again, the old man of me says everybody should start by coaching high school. It's its own unique beast that is,
Love
um,
it.
it's not running 40 point in the men's 4x1. It is running 48 point, and that being really, really good. Oh, did
No,
I?
sorry, my sister's calling me. That was Keisha calling me. I'm right
Her ears were ringing. She's like, "Who are you talking to?"
talking to. I know, terrible. But
Uh,
I'm sorry about that. But go
no,
ahead.
all good, all good. But so when you started working in Arizona in high schools and then you went to Minnesota, was there a moment, it could be relay or not, it could be an individual event, where something happened because of you as Coach Freeman now, and maybe it doesn't really matter. It could be Coach Lewis, obviously, at that point too. It doesn't matter. But
I was
instead
Coach
of
Freeman. It's
Okay.
okay.
But instead of Mechelle the athlete, it was Coach Freeman because of instruction or something you said that you saw bear out. You said something to a kid and they trusted you and did it. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe Coach Freeman is, I've been known as Mechelle the athlete. Maybe it is Coach Freeman that is where I was supposed to be on this earth, so to speak. Was there any moment during that high school coaching you can think of?
Oh my gosh. But man, was at a high school. I mean, yeah, it was those 4 years that I was there. Just seeing them go from the freshman girls who
Mm,
didn't understand just how to seize a moment and that it could be you,
mm,
to the moment of our last year together and pulling out a win at sectionals, and just telling them, I remember it was this one race and I was talking to the anchor leg, and I was like, look, it's going to come down to the last 100 meters. Okay. And I was like, when you feel her, just trust that you are prepared for this moment. And just keep moving. Like you'll be able to handle it. You'll know how to rise to the occasion. Just trust it. And it really happened that way. We came to the anchor leg, the last 100 meters. And so it was really just a moment to see if she trusted me. And that's what's so special about coaching is really working with the athletes, and you all get into a place where you trust one another.
mm.
And she was able to, I mean, again, you win by hundredths of a second in a moment like that, but people don't even realize a moment at Wayzata High School, sectionals is one of the best memories I'm gonna have, for the rest of my life, just because of a moment like that. For her to cross the finish line and do something that she didn't really believe she was capable of. Those are the things that drives me to coach.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. Let's hop into your relay coaching journey. You mentioned you started in 2015. And by the way, as you're listening to this, guys and gals, one of my favorite quotes actually from when you talk about relay and relay coaches actually comes from our men's counterpart, Mike Marsh. Mike had an interview with Track and Field News, and one of the quotes he said was, as the relay coach for Team USA, you don't need to invite criticism. It comes with the territory. So I just want to put it out there that as I talk with Mechelle here about her journey, and I ask some questions about relays, this is not a comparison at all. I'm not talking about Mike and the men's team at all. I'm really actually not even talking about Michelle's results as far as the relays. She probably will bring up some. I know we talked about TT Terry and some other really amazing relays and people you've been involved with, but it's not a comparison with that at all. So whatever conclusions you may want to jump to, don't, because they're not there at all. Um, Mechelle, what I'm curious about, so when I think about relay coaching, when I think about coaching, a lot of us, when we first get into coaching, specifically if we were former athletes, no matter how good or not good we were, right? We are light distances away, me and you, on our talent levels, okay, as far as athletes. But we generally, when we get into coaching, we fall back to how we were coached. It's what we know. That's the only thing we know is what did Coach Frye do for us and what did our high school coach do for us. And then as we go through level ones and level twos and experience,
Yep.
we journey into our own style. How when you first popped in 2015 and you're helping with the junior teams, and then by I think you said by 2019 you're running your own team and squad. How did you go from a great base, by the way, because again, South Carolina, I would have also said you guys were a relay school in regards to like there was never a relay you guys didn't win, from shuttle hurdles to 4x1 to 4x4, didn't ever matter. You guys were always hated. You guys were terrible. um, how did you begin when they said, okay, Mechelle, we're going to have you as the relay coach? You're like, okay, cool. I've done that. I've got personal experience and I've done some high school experience. How did you start like formulating your own style of teaching that event specifically? And really we're talking about the 4x1, right? I know the handoffs are important in 4x4, but we got more leeway there than we do in the
Yeah.
4x1. We got almost no in the 4x1, right?
No, for sure. I mean, the 4x4s, you definitely are still looking at talent. And now, especially with, that 400-meter talent coming from all different events, whether it's the 400 hurdles, the 800, the 200,
Right.
that's, shaped there. So it's more just about, the selection process of putting the four best athletes in that 4x4.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to the 4x1, it just came when I started, it just comes back to who I am as a person. I know how to study. I know how to prepare. And so I looked at what was in front of me and just said, like, what do I need to know more of? Of course, you go through the level ones and the level twos. I've studied and still have mentorship from Charles Clinton. I took the certification, the sprint class from Boo. So whatever I could do to study, study. The experiences of running the relays, I've been running championship relays for 20 years. So that's there, the feel of it, the art of it. But you also have to respect the technicality of it. So I wanted to make sure that I studied, I researched, I watched, I observed, what was the process with the USA relays that just what was the state of state? What are they doing? What is happening? So you're watching to see like where they are. Now you can start, after 4 years being on the junior teams, I could start to collect data and experiences. And I started to realize that it was three main components that was where that measured the success or failure of a relay at the USA level. And it all was rooted in because you have the interchangeability of a team. Year over year, the team is changing, and that's rooted in the selection process that trickles down to USATF. You have to take the top 3 in 100. You only get so many discretionary selections, and it comes from that day of a U.S. championship. So that's just what you have to deal with. So, okay, if that's the case, now I realized everyone was coming from different programs. And by the time you only had a short amount of time with them, everybody was doing different approaches. So my main thing was making sure that I created a process that we were all moving the same way. Like, okay, whenever you come to the USA process, this is what we need to do the same. And the 3 things that I noticed was the takeoff mark read, the acceleration pattern, how the people were moving through the zone. And then the 3 was just the pass, like, how they handle pass mechanics, receiving and passing the baton. And I started to realize, like, okay, I just needed to, because we were collecting data. We have people who we've been working with through the years, like Andy Farrar, who has been giving us data year over year. He goes to the highest point in the stands and figures it out and gives me data from, where the outgoing runner takes off, where the incoming runner hits the mark, where the pass is made, how many steps. So I just started putting all the data together, what was the average of how many steps an athlete was taking before they got the baton. And then the baton speed, like no one was really paying attention to the data point of the baton speed. So I just started to realize that, from a science point, if all the things you got to think about max velocity, how, deceleration, acceleration. So all the science, I just sat down year over year and just started to put it together where I was seeing like, okay, if I can manage those 3 components, then I can make sure the baton is moving at a certain speed. And you only have a certain amount of time. So that means that your decision-making has to be rooted in the people who is executing these things.
Right.
And it just came to a point that you had to, like, since I've been the head coach, you're pushing history of fastest people with descending order. And when I started pushing this process of, respecting the skill side of the relay, not just the speed side,
Mhm.
then you had to hold people accountable for the demands of the legs, executing the demands of the legs, executing the components. Are you reading the mark right? Are you accelerating? Some people have an issue with accelerating from 0 to 20. Do you have enough time to get that adjustment in for them to get the 0 to 20? Or if you don't, you have to know how to make the adjustment, things like, so, putting all that into play so that when it comes to my decision making, I'm putting the best people in the right places. And I have a predictive model of what we should be running, our full potential of what we should be running with the pool of people that we have. Now I can hold my pool accountable to the performance that they can do that's in front of me based on the times that they've been running that year, based on the 10-meter segments at the end of their races, how they're covering that last part of the 100 meters. You know, having the athletes understand that it's not just 100, it's 120 meters, 130 meters that, so I'm looking at people who can sustain, maximum speed over 120, over a straightaway, or somebody who can do that on a curve, 130 meters on the curve. So it's just so that when I have those conversations about decisions, that is very clear on where it's rooted in. And it just came back over years of just studying.
I know it's easy when we're not involved to, sit from the stands and judge. And again, that's why I like Mike's comment of like, yeah, I ain't got to invite criticism. It just comes with, as soon as that title, relays coach, boom, there it is. Everybody has the better way for you to do your job. But there's so many things that I don't think necessarily people know are going on. And what I mean by that is, if we take a step back and think about what the relay event is, it's hard to coach one person in, let's say, the 100-meter dash. There's a million things that can go wrong in one person running a 100-meter dash. You're dealing with four, and that's just the four on the track. You have a pool, so there's other things, there's more people actually involved. So when you times that by four, there's so many things that can go wrong or right. And you have a limited time. This isn't, I love the great, when you, and still even today, but when you guys were there at South Carolina, I in my head, I also called you guys a relay team, and that's no slam. Just, man, relays, you guys have seemed to really excel. I think about the Pat Henry teams that ran 4x1s. I remember one year at LSU, they won the 4x1 men's national title and didn't have a single, air quotes here, 100-meter specialist. They had like a long jumper, a 400-meter hurdler, things like this. But even with that, those four individuals, and again, maybe five or six, depending on, how they ran their team for that year, they were together from, let's call it Labor Day through May. You're dealing with 4 to 6 individuals that are together for, would you say it's fair to say measured in hours, not days, of how much time you guys actually have together to practice?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at so the spring domestic program, we bring our top athletes from the previous year together, but you don't know your exact teams,
Right.
but you still are working on the process. For me, I want them to work on the process, how you're reading the mark, how you're accelerating, how you're receiving it and passing the baton, how you're moving through the zones. And building that camaraderie, chemistry, understanding like how people move,
Right.
things like that. So when you have that time of just that short amount of time with the exact team, once you have the USA championships, between the global championship, you're looking at 4 weeks. In that 4 weeks, you may have 1 or 0 to 1 competitive opportunity with that exact team. I mean, this past summer we did not have a competitive opportunity before the game. So that prelim team was the first time I was seeing our team run together. So you have 3 days of relay camp, where you can get these athletes together. And if you say go into hours, I mean, you're practicing what, 2 hours, 2 hours a day. So
Right.
you're looking at 6 to 8 hours of practice with your exact team. So you're looking at three
Wow.
to 12 reps before you go out to a
Right.
championship.
Wow. Well, why can't, so these are all just random questions now, Mechelle. We take our top three from the 100-meter, then what do we allow? Like three more people that can come from the two, the four, discretionary or
You
whatever?
get your yeah, you get two discretionary selection in each relay. So 4x1, two, 4x4, two, and then mixed relays, you
Yeah.
get another two.
Why can't we? They always talk about, especially in America, we have the fastest people overall, whether we have the individual fastest, that depends on the year, right? But if you were to take our top four people in the 100-meter dash, they're faster aggregately than any other country out there. Why could, so maybe the same could be said between our fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth as well. Why can't we? This is my crazy idea here. Why can't we take fifth through eighth? So, because again, another factor on your relay squad is all those people are in individual events. So they're also concerned about their 100-meter prelims or 200-meter prelims, or either 400, so they got these other things that are going on as well. What if you took fifth through eighth and, we get a big sponsor to give them 50 grand each for the rest of the year. And those four just worked with you every day for the next 3 months leading up to the world champs or Olympics. Why can't we do that?
Well, you mean you still have the 4 week time because you
Yeah.
won't know what your fifth through eighth is.
No, 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 agree. Yeah, after trials, right? Yeah.
Okay, so after trials. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you could take 5 to 8th place. I mean, it's not saying that 5th to 8th place can't work. And that's the thing, I've always been in that predicament of being, who are you running your fastest? Or are you running your most prepared?
Because you've seen it, you have personally seen this. We've seen it on TV, me anyway. You see these teams like what is it, Poland and Japan, teams that traditionally don't have anybody in the finals, and they're first. Well, maybe not first, but sometimes they're first. But they're second, third, they're four. I mean, they are always in the finals, always placing. It's like, well, they're not the four fastest. Like our four would smoke that four,
Yeah.
but they practice together all the time. It's a crazy idea. I know, Mechelle. I just,
No, people ask it all the time, but this is the way I look at it as long as one of my top three athletes are prepared enough that because my decisions come in this way. One, am I sticking to the process that I've created? Second is I'm maximizing performance. So I'm gonna do as best as I can, but the third one has to be true too, which is minimizing risk. So if
yeah.
I'm making sure that all three of those are tapped in, so if my first through third allows me to check those three boxes, then I'll do it. Now, if my first through third compromises the risk, then I won't run them. And I have been in a predicament where I have not run my top three athletes on junior and senior teams. And of course, you receive backlash on that, but we win. And so that's where I have learned a very, in a hard way, because at those times where I have lost, on junior teams, where, sometimes I was like, oh, I'm going to run my fastest person. I got to run my fastest person. And it just wasn't enough time for them to practice. And it failed every single time. So now when it comes to your decision making, because that's what's critical in this job, is that you have to make sure that for the betterment of the team and the best outcome for the team, you're minimizing risk. And if that means that one of your top three athletes aren't running, then I have made the decision to do that.
I love that minimizing risk again, especially because of relay specifically, right? But I also like how you take all these outside factors that are happening. Again, they're running their individual events. You're trying to practice for hours, not days, months, weeks together here. But it seems like you, and I'm gonna use maybe a not great phrase because it may feel insulting to athletes, but it's not. You've dumbed it down. I like how you come up with like, here are the three things we want to be successful: A, B, C, because there's 100 other factors around there as well. But if we can do these three, it'll take care of 90% of the other stuff. And then,
100%.
at the end of the day, luck is still involved in these things. We tend to not give luck its due, but sometimes luck is, and therefore bad luck is in these things as well. But if you can take care of these three things, we're going to minimize the risk of bad luck happening here. I love how you've boiled it down to that essentialism.
Yeah, and it took experience for that to happen. I've been doing this for 9 years now,
Right.
And it took some moments. I mean, because everyone has their own priority, but the priority for me is the team, and I had to learn very quickly that can never be compromised. Everybody wants the athlete to run. Every athlete wants to run, but it always comes down to who's prepared. And that's what I just can never compromise. Who
Hmm.
is best prepared based on the results that you see in front of you today?
Let's talk a little bit about the makeup of the relay itself. We're going to scare my rule of we don't talk X's and O's, but I like to be able to give value to those who do listen. So there's certainly coaches that are listening, high school coaches, college coaches that are like, man, so how do I even make up my 4x1 team here? How true is it? Now, knowing that there are some people who are better out of the blocks than others. So when you start about like the lead off, maybe there's certainly people who can give a baton better than they can receive the baton. That's probably true. I'm not sure I'm sold on the curve runner versus straight runner thing, and only because I've seen so many air quotes straight runners, people who were 100-meter dash specialists, be on the third leg and absolutely demolish. I think of good friend Dennis Mitchell. I think of another guy who was a thorn in my side when I coached college, Tyson Gay, who was a third legger for Arkansas a lot, and he was a 100-meter guy. Those kind of things. How how true, not true is it when you're putting together that quartet? Think about a high school coach asking you that question. They've got maybe a pole vaulter is going to be on there, a 110 hurdler, and maybe a couple of sprinters. How true are these? Um, what would I call these axioms? These things that we think of like, oh, you got to have a good starter, and then you got to have someone who can run 130, 140 because that's the second leg is longer, and they better be a good curve runner if they're going to be third. How true
Yeah.
are all those things as you're putting together a team?
Yeah, I mean, well, you always want to think about, the demand of each leg. What is each leg, what's being asked of each leg when it comes to the technical performance of it. Just like you will prepare for any race, a technical performance. What is the demand of what needs to be done? And so you look at the strength of your pool. Who are the athletes that are in front of me? And you start to look at the historical context of their performance capabilities, what they have been doing, and you compare that to the demands of the leg. And so I always start there to at least start to narrow down where they feel most comfortable.
Mm,
Because if you have a short amount of time with people, you only can ask them to do so much, and the brain needs to have some innate ability just to go out there and do what it knows to do. And then you need to have a small percentage of the technical I need to learn and make sure of, so that you have a balance of just performing and overthinking,
mhm,
not just thinking too much. So I want to make sure I put them in a position where you don't go out there thinking. You're
mhm.
just going out there and doing.
Right.
So you need to have some level of familiarity when you're placing people in these roles. So that's what is really based off of.
Mhm.
Once you do that, now you're talking about, okay, again, the strength of your pool. Do you have somebody that usually, come out the blocks all the time? Are they, if they're running the championship, you've got your open people, they've been coming out the blocks the whole week in a competitive environment. So that's great. You can have somebody who's, if they're running the open, then they've been coming out the blocks a lot. Again, familiarity, put them out the hole. They've been coming out the blocks the whole week. Great, come out the blocks again. On the backstretch, yes, if you have somebody that can manage that top end speed without breaking down, and you can have that potential, like in Budapest when TT had to run the whole 130 meters, then you need somebody who can run a whole 130 meters, because it may come down to where you're making that pass at 129 meters,
Right.
and you need somebody who can have minimum deceleration. So yes, you do need to be looking at the potential of them executing a full 130 versus 100 meters. When it comes to curve runners, the curve on that of course it has a different demand than the straight. So if you have somebody who's familiar with that more than somebody else, then it's less for them to think about,
Mhm.
more for them to do what they've been doing. So if you have somebody like in 22 with Jenna Prandini, who has been running, she was running 21 nines that year. And she would, if you looked at her 130, she was always running her fast 130s, 130s on the turn. She was always running fast 130s. So if you looked at your relay pool, if it was anybody else who was doing anything more for you not to start there, But if you're thinking about where you want to start, then you're checking off the boxes of this person runs this one on the curve, this person runs two, this person runs. Then again, it's familiarity. So I
Yeah.
think when you're looking at it, you just have to look at the perspective of just supporting the innate ability to execute the demands of each leg.
On your level, and let's call it one level down, the college level, the people that you're dealing with, that you get to work with, they have, in general, I know some of them are different than others, but in general, they've all been studs since high school, meaning, and they've probably all, and again, there's probably an exception here and there, they've all run relays. They've all run the 4x1 their entire lives. They and maybe they all, because they were studs, were the anchors in high school. But then in college, they get moved to a third or a second or a first leg, and then they come to you, and you're like, yeah, but I think you should be third leg. I mean, don't they come to you a little bit when you say familiarity? And I get that. That makes a lot of sense. When I think of when you mention a Prandini, what is the first thing I think of for a relay? Oh, third leg. I mean, that's just my automatic. But I'm also like, I bet she ran the second or fourth, either in college or in high school, a lot as well. So she had to learn that third leg. I don't know where I'm really going with this question, but how do you're dealing with experienced people in all four legs, I have to imagine, in some form or fashion. How do you, when you say familiarity, is it, I'm gonna use the word pigeonhole, don't yell at me, or is it just, the context of decision making and minimizing risk?
It 100%. You are minimizing risk, and you have to look at your pool. Like if you have somebody, if you have more second legs, and you only have one third leg person, then you got to put them in a place where that third leg, again, it goes back to minimizing risk.
Yeah.
And if you have more options of people to fill in two and four, then you just have to make them adjust. Of course, Prandini can run two. She's run two for me before. She's run
Right.
four for me before on previous relays. But when it comes to that third leg, for some reason, it's very clear on why, but that's always the leg at the elite level that you're going to have someone make an adjustment. And so you want to minimize that risk with someone who, again, goes back to familiarity on that space, but based on the strength of your pool. Look at your pool, do the numbers, who's had more experience where, and then if her number comes up because she's had more experience on that, you got to go three this time.
Yeah. I love that. Well, speaking of minimizing risk, and I'm sure I'm not asking you any question no one else has never asked you here before. Again, as the relay coach, you ain't got to ask for feedback. You just get it. Unlike any other coach, by the way, the sprints coach for the Olympic team does not get this same amount of advice, if you will. What about? Because I know there's coaches that are going to ask this. Have I say you can only speak for yourself. Have you ever thought, again, because you got a minimal amount of time, so this might be the reason why you haven't thought about doing this. The upsweep of the baton, used very, again, I think by Poland and maybe a Japan, but some certainly teams in every World Champs Olympics finals are going to use the upsweep. Have you ever thought about doing the upsweep? I'm assuming what I hear is that is a little bit less risky than our traditional push pass. Have you ever even thought about that, or is it like, no, we can't do that?
It's funny because, like I said, I'm always studying. So like Coach JT Ayers, the high school coach,
That is who I had in mind when I said someone right now is like, ask her about the upsweep. And he is one of the people. Absolutely.
no, for sure. So I actually took his high school relays coach on Coach Two. Again, I'm looking at everything. I learn from coaches at all levels. I can always learn and receive information. So I actually took his course and looked at what his thoughts on the upsweep. Again, it goes back down to you will have to change the U.S. program's full approach, and that's going to have to start in the spring and give you time to change a whole program culture and approach that you will have time to get everybody on board with not a lot of time in the summer.
Yeah.
And then you may not even have touch points with those athletes in the spring. And so again, you're talking about 3 days, 3 to 12 reps, and coming in with you're building off of a collegiate program, a high school program, that they have way more reps with a push pass than an upsweep. Like you're talking about 0 to 10% of athletes who have ever even
Yeah.
experienced the upsweep. So again, it just goes back down to minimizing risk. And if that was something that would have to, you would have to take real investment and time to change that. And of course, I've been looking into that and doing research on it as well, but it hasn't come to the point yet, JT. Uh, where I've just decided to really invest to make the switch.
Yeah, I think you're right. There, the way you answered that, I think about it has to almost be like a culture change that happens before you. You mentioned 0 to 10%. Boy, that 10% might be way
That's high.
high.
Yeah, I
That's
understand.
high,
That's high.
but
I'm just
it would
accounting
have,
for the California athletes who've been trying to, push it
yeah,
that way. But 10% is high. You're right. We were talking about
yeah.
3. Let's go 0 to 3.
Yeah, that's closer. That's closer. So
Yeah.
yeah, you almost have to have like this culture swell in the high school level where a majority of people use it, and therefore the college coaches go, okay, well maybe I need to start using it, and then another swelling of college
Yeah.
coaches that use it, and then maybe you could get there because you're right. If you were to look at 100% of all the relay passes that the people you're working with have done, 0 to 1% of that.
Go 0 to 1. Let's take it down.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting for you to, talk to the team and be like, "Hey, have you guys ever heard of the upswing?" And just see how many have even heard of it. I bet
Yeah.
that's going to be a single digit as well. So yeah, there's more to it than just, oh, well, if it's safer, let's do it with our team. It's like, man, they don't even know how to do this. They're used to the,
We
yeah,
see more and more of it, especially with the Japanese.
yeah,
But yeah, it's just a level of commitment that takes, it's a commitment at all levels, that we will have to come together as coaches and really talk about, what that looks like in the
yeah.
U.S.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's do a terrible transition because I do want to spend a little bit of time here on this as well because uh, this seems to be we make our legacy by the actions that we do and the people that we build. And you are certainly building a lot of things with our young ladies who are on our junior and senior teams and the relay specifically. But this TrackGirlz thing, I listened to it. You guys talked about it a little bit on Justin's podcast, and it got me more and more interested. I've certainly seen a couple of tweets or Instagram or something throughout my years, but I don't know a lot about it. But it seems like really, really important. So I want to shed some light on this thing. Talk to us about what TrackGirlz is, when and how did you start it? What was the initial goal? What are you trying to do today with TrackGirlz?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been called a track girl since I started at 13. They're gonna track girls. It's a real community of sisterhood. I've experienced that South Carolina, just strong, talented women coming together, supporting one another, competing against one another, challenging one another. But I just trademarked the name. My marketing came into play, and it was like, we're a real brand. We're a real brand. And once I started coaching, I trademarked TrackGirlz just so I can make sure that I have some community outreach in what I'm doing since I'm back in the sport in this way. And I started out by doing workshops just to directly provide mentorship to girls, especially in those marginalized communities, because like I said, starting at the grassroots level, those coaches are who made the difference for me. And so I want to make the difference for athletes, meeting them in that certain space, and just making sure we meet them at that grassroots level, making sure they know the opportunities and they have those special experiences, to believe that it can be them. I always talk about that. It can be you. And the workshops have been great. We've gone into South Africa. I just got back from Guyana with the U.S. Embassy. Um, so all
Dude,
over I know we've gone all over the world, and of course in the U.S., wherever I go, with the trials or U.S. championships, I'm always, having ties there. So I have different ties in different communities around the world, which has been awesome. We award grants to girls to make sure we're removing any barriers to the sport. I mean, track and field is the #1 participatory sport for middle and high school girls in the U.S. And so we want to make sure that girls who want to continue to fill in that just to have that experience of the sport, that we're giving them that, and it's not because of a barrier. And so we've awarded, we're a small nonprofit, but we've awarded over $80,000 in grants to girls to have access to the sport. And so my goal is that I just finished writing a curriculum for third parties and Title I schools and local community organizations, but any school to be able to teach what we teach at our workshops is based in social, mental, and physical development through the sport, using stories of empowerment of track girls, of women in the sport from all over the world. So my goal is just to expand, get our what we teach into third parties to be able to scale what we do. And then just continue to fundraise so that the more we can receive, the more we can give.
I love, no one person can know everything, but I love that there is this organization that you're running, and you have, I assume you have a team that helps you as well, that I didn't know much about, but you're going to Guyana. It's not like, this isn't like, oh, we've talked about doing, like, you're not talking, you're doing. That's quite amazing.
Yeah, no, it has been. Again, I had some tremendous. It's a lot of things that I really thank God for choosing me for. I know it could be anybody else, but for some reason He chooses me, and I take that assignment very seriously. If He chooses me, He means that it's for me, and I just make sure that I just take every responsibility, every gift that I'm given very seriously, just to make sure that I'm doing what God sees in me. So yeah, I mean, my life has been a true blessing since high school to this moment right now, and I don't know what the future holds, but I just trust, and I will continue to trust that wherever I'm placed, that means I'm equipped for it, and I'll continue to do that.
For some reason, I'm just thinking of that. I don't know if it's an actual verse or if it's just a saying of, God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies those He
Yeah, the
calls. And
call.
so,
Yeah.
I just love that. Uh, you were, I don't want to say lucky, but again, luck is part of, where you grew up. You didn't choose where you grew up and things like that.
Didn't
But
have to be me. Like,
you,
Sue didn't
you,
have to call me.
yeah, yeah,
Terry Crawford didn't
that's
have to
right.
yeah, like, those moments, it didn't have to be me, but that's why I tell everybody it can be you. Whatever I did in my life and my roles coming up into that moment, they felt like it should be me. And so you're qualified based on your own experience. Everybody's path of qualification is different.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, once you're called, then it's your responsibility to prepare yourself. And so I've always been committed to the preparation to be ready for every moment. Like, you're not going to find me in a moment that I'm not prepared for.
Yeah, I love that. Where is the best place someone is hearing this right now? They're like, wait, I want to know more. Either that I'd like to bring that program to my school, or they want to help support financially or other ways. Is there a website or a social media? What's the best place for us to go to?
TrackGirlz with a Z. So, add a little finesse in there. But, trackgirls.org, or on our Instagram, TrackGirlz. Please reach out. I do a lot of speaking. So if anybody ever wants just to understand, high performance, how to build winning teams, just how to bet on yourself, how to rise to the occasion, at any moment, just, please reach out to me. As Mechelle Lewis Freeman is my Instagram as well.
Well, I do love that. I think back to the stories that I've had the privilege to be able to share here with Karen Dennis, now formerly of the Ohio State, Sue Humphreys, others. And, it struck me of when they eventually, whether it was they were a kid or later on as an adult, saw someone that looked like them in that position. It was, yeah, I can't remember who, someone described it as almost like an aha moment of like, oh, wait a minute. Well, that means I can become that as well. And so I think, an organization like yourself at trackgirls.org, helps other, in this case, mirror of you, young Black girls being able to see that, oh, I can be an Olympian.
Yep.
I can be a track coach. I can become a teacher. There are many
Yep.
other amazing things that sometimes kids, through no fault of their own, they're kids. They just don't know that it's even available. Even in today's world where everything's in our palm of our hands, but not everybody has that in the palm of their hands. So with the
Yep.
cell phone and
That's
such.
true.
So I love that you're doing that, and love the team that you have with you that is doing that as well.
I
That's
mean, and it also takes, like, I had the Latanya Sheffields, like
mm,
when nobody had my back, and I'm in this role and you're making these decisions and you got to make some real tough decisions. But people who just stood up for me, Latanya Sheffield, Sonia Farmer Patrick, they really stood up for me. And it takes, that's why I'm just saying, like, it takes it for people to see you, people to have your back. So I thank you all out there who have the women who have stood up for me, who saw me, And I'm gonna continue to do the same thing. That's what TrackGirlz is about, seeing the next one. So yeah, it just takes a community of people, a sisterhood, a true sisterhood. And I've been surrounded by that from birth, from my sister to college, to high school, to college, to pros, to now.
Well, Mechelle, I plan on doing this podcast for at least 10, 20, 30 more years. I can't wait to have someone on the show and they go, you know who stood up for me? Mechelle Freeman at the 2028 Olympics, man. I had no business being on there, but she bleeds me. That's going to happen. And I can't wait to continue not only your legacy in regards to that, but a Sue and a Terry and all these other Sandra Farmer. I mean, just that's a continuation of their legacy in looking at you right there in the mirror there. So, Mechelle, thank you so much. The most valuable thing you can ever give me is your time. You obviously are very busy. You've already missing phone calls and everything that you need to
Oh
get
my
back.
God. I'm so sorry.
You got to get back
You know what?
on.
I would have turned that off since my daughter stole my phone. Yeah. I shouldn't
No worries, no worries. It's all good. Just so grateful for you sitting down with us today, sharing your journey. I do recommend for you guys and gals that are listening, go to Ready Set Go podcast. There were some things that we didn't get into here that I thought were just fantastic. Really, some of the I'll call it the scientific portion of relays with the baton speeds and how that has grown up with Mechelle through the program as well. Grown up in that program, and it's quite fascinating stuff. And then of course you have the experience of a Justin, and who's been in a few relays himself, that it makes for a good interview. So I just want to encourage you to head over there to that show as well. Mechelle, thank you so much. Really, really grateful for your time, and excited to see what LA 28, and there's a couple meets in between that I think you're going to have a hand in as well, and just really excited that you're leading our young women on the relay team specifically for Team USA. Thank you so much.
Thanks for you having me.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for being here. Join us next week. We'll do it all over again. See you guys.